Back to my channel, this is the Metatron speaking. Yes, it's not clickbait, it is true. My grandfather and my uncle, his son, were both knighted. We're gonna talk about this. I thought this was an interesting way to do a little bit of personal history, family history, and personal experience, show you some remarkable objects that I've got here, and this is all the real deal, and at the same time discuss first, what it means when someone is knighted in the modern period, what kind of differences, at least in my country, you had between being knighted under the king and then being knighted under the republic, both of which happened in my family. Last but not least, I would like to take this opportunity to discuss in a comparative key about the differences between the modern title of a knight and the actual medieval title of a knight, both societally and functionally. So first and foremost, what am I on about? What happened with my grandfather? So his name was Cristoforo, and he was, how can I put it, a very old school man, I'm told. I don't know, I've never met any of my grandparents, but he worked in a bank as a bank director for many, many years. And then at one point, I believe in the 1930s, I'll double check with my uncle, his son, he received the honorific title of knight, which in Italian would be cavaliere. And this happened when we still had a king. So he was a knight of the king. Knight of the king. So anyways, what happened is that he received this. So these are period original, there we go, knighthood medals. So this is something that it's quite rare to be able to see in person. Now, the reason why I have it is that his son gifted them to me. He's still alive, my uncle. Before I moved to America, he said, no, I really want you to have these as a family memorabilia. And so, yeah, you're just looking at real Knight of the King Italian medals given as an honorific title to my grandfather. Now, my uncle, his son, was also knighted. This happened in the 1980s. So at that point, he was a Knight of the Republic. I feel like I'm talking Star Wars here. Knight of the Republic in the family, and he also received medals. As you see, the box is different. So this is the box you get if you're a Knight of the Kingdom of Italy, and this is what you get if you're a Knight of the Republic. Now, given green, red, personal preference, I guess, but when we look at the actual medals in recognition of being a Knight of the Republic, I have to say, still nice, but the others are much better, to be honest. So, like, yeah, it's still cool to receive this. Congratulations to Uncle Valerio. But if we compare them, to be honest, I think this looks much better. And I also really like the smalt, I think that is, the white part, and the red and white more than green and red. First and foremost, what was the difference between becoming a knight during the Kingdom of Italy and becoming a knight during the Republic? During the World Wars and then the transition to the Italian Republic, the knighthood system in Italy underwent significant changes. Under the Kingdom of Italy, the Italian monarchy maintained several chivalric orders that could grant knighthoods: orders of St. Maurice and Lazarus, Order of the Crown of Italy, and other various military orders. However, in 1946, we have the Order of Merit of the Italian Republic, which is the one my uncle got knighted through. Now, how do you get this honorific knight title in Italy, at least, or in general in the modern period, regardless of the country? Well, people could be knighted for military service, civil service, contributions to arts and sciences, or other meritorious acts. In Italy, during the kingdom, it was of course the king that held the authority to grant these honors, often on recommendation from government ministers or military commanders. However, after 1946, when Italy abolished the monarchy through a referendum and established a republic, the situation became different. You still had dynastic orders, so the House of Savoy, former royal family in Italy, continued to claim the right to grant knighthoods in their historical orders like St. Maurice and Lazarus. However, these became purely ceremonial honors without official state recognition in Italy. Instead, the official one would be Republican orders. The new Italian Republic established its own honor system, including the Order of Merit of the Italian Republic, which could grant knighthoods and other ranks. These were now awarded by the President of the Republic rather than a monarch. So as we said, the one in the box is this one. So why I did speak about how my grandfather Cristoforo received it. I think it was because, as I say, many, many years of civic service, but within the bank system, very high level. What about my uncle Valerio? What did he do? Well, he's a lawyer, and specifically he worked for the Italian government for 30 or 40 years, probably 40 years. And so at the end of all of this career in law, the Italian Republic granted him this honorific title. Let's talk about legal status, however. Italy's 1946 constitution initially prohibited former royal family members from entering the country, and use of noble titles was restricted, with the Vatican also allowed for papal knighthoods to continue. So after 1946, someone could still be knighted through republican honors, dynastic orders from the exiled House of Savoy but not officially recognized in Italy, Vatican orders recognized due to the Lateran Treaty, and foreign orders with government permission. So, in other words, this transition from the kingdom to the republic created a dual system where both republican and monarchist traditions of knighthood coexisted, though with very different legal standing. Talk about legal standing. What do you gain by being knighted in the modern period? Because, of course, as we will explore in the second section of this video, when we actually tackle what it meant to be a knight in the medieval period as opposed to be a knight in the modern period, what do you gain by being a knight now? Well, of course, again, it's a title of honor, prestige, but it's not something that gives you a job, or it's not something that gives you a stipend, or it's not something that gives you direct benefits. But there is something that you do gain, and as far as I'm concerned, I've seen it happen, and I think that makes it worth it on its own. You can do two things functionally. One, you can sign as a knight. In other words, you can swap Mr. or whatever other title you have to knight in Italian cavaliere. So if you were signing, for example, doctor, whatever, or if you were signing lawyer, whatever, which we do in Italy sometimes, particularly when it's like public offices where you're working on your desk, for instance, you can absolutely swap a Mr. for knight. And people do it, obviously. With the few people that do have these titles, including my uncle, they do it. Then every time they sign, they do cavaliere, right? Sometimes you can do CAV to shorten it. And another thing you can do is that you can put it on your door. Now, this might sound strange. Like, why would you put it on your door? Well, maybe I don't see it happen much here in America. People don't put their surnames on their doors, but we do in Italy. So when you go to an apartment block and you're looking at names, you always have the name of the family on the intercom when you're trying to ring the right family. And of course, you have the names. And you can put your title. So sometimes people do put lawyer, whether it's a barrister or an actual, or just a lawyer, it depends. But people do put knight in that case. So for example, my uncle has it both on his intercom and then in front of his door, because people in Italy put a plaque in front of their doors with the family name. And if you are knighted, you can absolutely put cavaliere and then your name. And then the second thing that I think makes it worth it is that every time I go out with my uncle and we go to a bar, which would be the Italian, it's not a bar in the English sense, it's a bar in the sense that that's what we call a cafe. So when we go to a cafe to have a coffee and people know him, they always refer to him as cavaliere, knight. So they're like, buongiorno cavaliere. They do that because that's your title, you received it. And so people usually know and call you with that. And that alone, I'd like to know why I haven't been knighted at this point. I mean, come on, Italy, what are you doing? You know, my grandfather was knighted, my uncle was knighted, and I'm the one with the knight armor. So who do I need to talk to? Meloni? I don't know. You tell me. You point me to who's in charge. The Pope? Shall I get knighted directly from the American Pope, an Italian in America? That would be great.